Starting. Okay, it's recording now, so I'm gonna put it off camera.
Well, greetings, everyone. It's great to be with you again. This is another meeting of PennLive's editorial board. We do these meetings frequently, and we invite, of course, distinguished newsmakers, and we want to make them available to the public as well. So whatever editorial we write, we will include this video in it. And today, we would like to welcome Representative Malcolm Kenyatta to our editorial board meeting. Welcome, Representative.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, again, this is also a special meeting, as we have warned him. We not only have our editorial board, but we have a group of young people who are with us. They are high school and college interns in a program that the World Affairs Council does in collaboration with PennLive. So these young people are learning about civics, about government, and about how they can become active in American society. So with that background, I just want to again welcome Representative Kenyatta and jump right in. Representative, your first question is really to talk about a little bit about where things stand with you today with leadership. You have been through the ringer, it seems. I mean, stuff is going on in the Democratic Party, even as you look to trying to, I guess, become that opposition to what is going on Capitol Hill. So let's start there. What are your reflections on what has happened with the Democratic Party?
So first, let me start by just with the most important phrase in any language. Thank you. Thank you for all the work that you do to educate people across Pennsylvania about what's happening in their government, in their name. And a really special thank you to the young people who've decided to step up, as we all must, as our generations must, to really figure out how we put our hand to the collective till to make sure this experiment in self-governance doesn't die on our watch. And a critical aspect of that is obviously the fourth estate. And, at least today, you're on with somebody who does not believe that you are the enemy of the people, who does believe in a strong, thriving press where we are asked hard questions and where you all do the work that you do of, again, educating readers about what's happening in their government. All that being said, there is nobody, least among me, who wanted to spend as much time as we did talking about Democratic Party parliamentary procedure. Because I think we have a clear three-word focus and mission as a party, and I've been saying it all across this country. Our job is to make life better. I think that is the Democratic Party's mission, and ultimately, I think that that's our message. And frankly, I think that that is how we are going to meet this moment, building a strong Democratic Party that is resilient enough, forward-looking enough, and inspirational enough that people want to get re-engaged in the political process. Because a part of where we find ourselves right now, and we saw it reflected in the results in the last presidential election, is that you had a lot of people who had previously voted for Democrats who just stayed home. Who stayed home? Folks who are independent, who looked around and said, Democrat, Republican, nobody is in it for me. And we have to make sure that every single day we're making it clear to people that somebody is in it for you, that we are in it for you, but also we're in it with you. And in this moment, I have been crystal clear that for me, I really look to history. Yes, we are living in unprecedented times, but as the old saying goes, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it rhymes. And there's a lot of rhyming going on right now with folks who would be authoritarians, folks who are engaging in the type of divisive politics that distracts all of us, while a few of the wealthiest people, frankly, pick our fucking pockets. And that is what we're up against right now. We have folks who are making it clear every single day that they do not care about us. They do not care about working families like mine. And I've been saying this repeatedly, that if you want us to understand sort of where we are in this moment, I think we have to figure out how to answer a question that is rhetorical, but that I really would love people to answer. How much is enough for these folks? How much is enough? Because the big, awful bill that is moving its way through the Senate right now is a bill that would be the single largest redistribution of wealth in this country from the poorest Americans to the wealthiest Americans. And we're doing it at a time where those group of wealthy Americans are the wealthiest individuals to ever exist in human history. In human history. I mean, we talk about the Gilded Age sometimes, but the Gilded Age does no justice to the level of wealth that has been concentrated in the hands of a few people at the expense of everybody else. And so they don't care that this bill would kick off. There are different people who've looked at this, but anywhere between 14 to 17 million people off of their health care. So that people understand this, we would have fewer people insured than we did prior to the passage of Obamacare. That is how destructive this bill would be. And I know there are some who say, well, I'm not on Medicare or Medicaid, so what does it matter to me? Well, you know what? On average, the Insurance Federation and others who have looked at this have said premiums would go up about 16%, and we would see the mass closure of hospitals, particularly in our rural areas. You have to think about what this bill does to food. We would literally be stealing food out of the mouths of kids. Kids are going to be the hardest hit in terms of the reduction in staff benefits, and not just kids, but veterans, folks who have served our nation in uniform, who have done the hard work that only about 2% of the US population does. We honor them, we do parades, and then we come home and say, no, we're not going to ensure that you have the food stamps that you need. That's what this budget does. And then finally, I would highlight what this budget does to students and to young people. This budget would lead to, the Financial Times reported that if this budget would pass, it would lead to a windfall of defaults in terms of folks who are paying back their student loans. And we have the possibility of seeing inflation, which has just risen based on the last piece of data we had a few days ago. We see the trade deficit, which has exploded because of these unstrategic, completely unthoughtful tariffs. We've seen income inequality, which I've spent a lot of time talking about, but there are more metrics that have made it clear that just in the last couple of months, that has exploded even more. But this budget would really be a death spiral for our economy because it does a bunch of bad things at one time. It cuts off people from the critical care that they need from a health perspective and all of the things that go along with that in terms of people's ability to go out into the workforce if you don't have quality health care, or if your loved one who needs quality health care can no longer receive the benefits of staying in a skilled nursing facility, for example. You're going to have a lot of people who are going to have to leave the workforce to care for ailing parents, to care for members of their families that are disabled who no longer have that care. So you have that aspect of ripping people out of the workforce at a time where we want more people in the workforce, frankly. You're going to raise the average energy costs by 30%, and energy and healthcare costs are the two greatest costs, if you put aside food, are the two greatest costs for the average American. We know that in this country right now, the number one reason that people go bankrupt is because of healthcare costs. And so we're going to put people in a position where more people are going to have more costs, because instead of getting preventative care, they're showing up to the emergency room instead. And then at the same time, we are effectively taxing at a much higher level the people who have the least ability to pay. This bill is a tax increase for majority of the American people who make below, I guess $250,000 or so a year. They're going to see a massive tax increase. And they're also going to see the biggest increase in need. And so this is really something that would be a Category 5 decimation of the economy, because a lot of folks don't understand that we are a consumer-based economy. And those very people that you are displacing out of the workforce, that you're slating with higher energy costs, that you're making it impossible for them to have the health care that they need and all the supports that surround that, those are also the people that are most likely to be spending their dollars out back into the economy, buying the goods and services that they need. So when we invest in working class people, it's a real investment in the economy. When we give huge tax breaks to people who are already wealthy, what they do is hoard more of that wealth, and it does not go back into the economy economy in the same way. So I say all of this to say the Democratic Party has to spend every single day communicating in every possible way that we can the destructive nature of this legislation and to drive home to the American people that you were lied to. There are a lot of people who are looking at the cost that they had and said, you know, Democrats, you didn't fix it in the White House. Joe Biden, you didn't fix it. Kamala, you didn't fix it. They were upset about that. And so they said, we're going to give this guy another chance, who's talking about, as he said, he was going to destroy inflation. He was going to lower costs on day one. He was going to, you know, end some of the, wars that we've seen around the world with on day one, a swipe of a pen, I guess, is what he said he was going to do. And instead, we're seeing the exact opposite. And the worst lie of all is he said over and over again that he would not touch Medicare and Medicaid, that he would not touch Medicare and Medicaid. That was a lie from the deepest depths of hell that we've ever seen a politician tell. And the impact of it is that a lot of people who voted for him are going to be the ones who are going to feel this the most. And so I've made it clear that in this work and in this fight, I am standing up for, and Democrats are standing up for people who may not then go in the ballot box and vote for us. But I think our job as public servants is to not ask, well, I'll only help you if you're going to vote for me. Our job is to do right by folks, irrespective of how they're registered to vote, irrespective of how they choose to engage in the political process or not. That's our job. But it is shameful. It is shameful that you have Democrats like me who are from the big city that Republicans want to demonize is fighting more vigorously for folks in rural communities than the same people that are elected to serve those communities. It is Ashanda. It is wrong. It should not be happening. And frankly, all it would take are 4 senators in the Senate and 4 or 5 members of the House who are Republicans to have the courage that they have not demonstrated in the first couple of months of this administration. So that's a long answer, long Miss Davis, but I think it's really important.
Appreciate it. No, you've laid out exactly what the issues are, at least from your perspective. You're worried about this big, beautiful bill. You believe that from healthcare to seniors to Medicare to just having people be able to contribute to the economy, you believe it's going to be detrimental. But here's the rub. Here's the problem that many of us see, and I'm going to invite my editorial board members to have first crack at some of these questions. The rub is everybody, I think every American should want 2 strong parties, right? I mean, both Democrats and Republicans, if not more. I'm in the more category, but what we're seeing, and unfortunately, what many are looking inside to see, is that the Democratic Party is weak now. And tell me I'm wrong. I'd love to know. It feels weak. It feels weak because, well, just look at what you've lost just with the Congress and with the White House. But it also feels weak again because of this inner bickering, the apparently generational divide that and battle that is going on now to let the old people move out and let the young people move in. But also there was the issue of even a gender divide, so that we saw raised in the battle for. So tell us, I mean, how is the Democrat? And the reason we're coming to you is because you're a Pennsylvanian.
That's right.
We can
That's right.
hold you accountable. What
That's
is being done to actually solidify, unify, and strengthen the Democratic Party?
So a part of why I decided to take this gig is because I believe we need a strong Democratic Party. And there are 1 or 2 things that I could have done. I could just stay on Twitter and just say this sucks, or you do the hard work of working within systems to fix them. And the reality is systems don't change from the outside. They change from good people stepping up, going in the inside to make them what they can and must be. And in this moment, what we can and must be is a party that does a number of different things. And frankly, I think we're making progress in that. The first thing that we have to do is to look local first. I think that in this last election, we have sort of all done ourselves a disservice in treating this election as an unstoppable approval of Donald Trump and as a ongoing unchangeable rejection of Democrats. I don't think that that's necessarily true. If you look locally in the last national election, if you look the farther down ballot you went, the better Democrats did. You look at the Senate race, with the exception, obviously, of losing our great senator, Bob Casey. Many of the toss-up U.S. Senate races, those Democratic candidates were successful. They won. If you look at the special elections that have been held, I believe there are 34, to my last count, special elections that have been held since the November general election. Democrats have overperformed in 32 of the 34 elections. I think we won 30 of the 34, not least of which in Omaha, Nebraska, where Democrats flipped the longest serving municipal Republican held seat. The mayor there, she's the longest serving municipal Republican in the country. We flipped that seat. And because Democrats flipped that seat, Don Bacon, who serves in that congressional district, just announced yesterday or the day before that he's not running for re-election because he is feeling what's happening on the ground in Omaha as well. And so I make this point that I think a part of the Democratic Party's problem is that nationally, is that we've treated the DNC as if its only job is to throw a big party every 4 years and to announce the nominee. When the reality is we have to be a party that treats people running for school board with the same significance and seriousness that we treat people running for U.S. Senate, and treat folks running for mayor or council with the same, respect and interest that we treat folks who are running for Congress. Because I think at this moment, the inability to have the type of success that we need at the national level is really a reflection of the inability to build infrastructure at the more local level. And so I think that we have done a lot to make it clear that we're not going to sit around and just wait for the next presidential primary, that there are elections that we can win right now, that we need to be making investments to win, even as the national party. You look at the investments that we made in Wisconsin for that Supreme Court race, that Supreme Court seat, Wisconsin, and now that Supreme Court seat is done, there is going to be a key redistricting case that comes before it. And so even though it was a Wisconsin race, it's going to have national implications. I mentioned the mayoral race in Nebraska and the way that sort of has national implications. You look here in Pennsylvania, where now Senator Malone flipped a seat that Democrats had not held since 1889. Okay, and so we are, as a national party, making sure that we are doing the type of investment in the local that we need to. And here are some specific ways that we're doing that. We are investing right now $1 million a month into our state parties. This is the single largest investment from the DNC to state parties in the history of the DNC, $1 million a month, so that state parties can have some budgetary certainty, but B, begin to make the types of investment in the year-round organizing that Democrats must be engaged in to win. The first time you talk to a Democrat shouldn't be to say, hey, vote for this candidate on this flyer. It should be people on the ground who are engaging in the type of deep canvassing that we know produces not only real electoral, success, but also produces candidates who step up and run grounded in the concerns that they heard people communicate to them on the ground, right? People on the ground tell you what they want and what you need. And we have to have candidates who are stepping up, who reflect those desires and those real material concerns that people have. And so that year-round organizing is a part of that. B, we have to communicate with people wherever they are. And we're doing that in a variety of different ways, including standing up a new war room where we have taken our digital communication, our traditional comms communication, and actually taken them out of silos so that they are working together within the building. And so the average person, that means nothing to them, but anybody who's run an organization understands that to run a big organization, you have to have people working together in a streamlined, functional way that produces an output that people can experience, from a more positive perspective. And then the final thing I'll say is this: we have to talk about the future and what we stand for. A part of my, constant complaint is that Democrats spend too much time letting other people tell our story, too much time allowing other people to say who Democrats are and what we stand for. And you just have the vice chair of the DNC right now telling you what the 3 words are that are guiding our mission, our message, and the work that we do. Our job is to make life better. That is who we are. And if we're going to move forward as a party and be successful in winning elections, then we can't spend every single day trying to get stuck in sort of analysis paralysis. We have to sort of move forward. And the way that we are moving forward is all the different structural investment things that I sort of laid out, and I left some on the table, but also to talk about who we are as a party, and what we want to do moving forward. And those 3 words really sum it up.
So what I take from all of that, as I turn to my editorial board for questions, what I take from all of that is that what you're doing to strengthen the parties is starting at the grassroots level, at the ground level. You hope that will basically work its way up to having a strong national presence and national impact. And you've got a 3-word slogan: make life better. I got it. Okay. So let's see who's got their hand. Rajette Harris has the first question, and then Jeffrey. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. Well, first, I agree with you on, Trump Republican Party. I'll leave Jeffrey for that. We won't disagree. We won't disagree with that piece. But my question to you is coming. Number one, I am a local elected official for a township. Number two, as you know, I'm a county chair. And
Yep.
3, I am the South Central PA regional caucus leader. So I'm in the grassroots
Yep.
for the party. And all politics is local. So I just want to make sure I'm coming from this viewpoint because I'm speaking from experience. South Central PA is the fastest growing population center in the state, particularly Cumberland County. And can he hear me? Am I
I
frozen or
can.
just him?
Oh,
Yeah, it
am
looks
I
like
frozen?
yeah, it looks
Oh,
like
okay.
you're frozen, but that's right. As long as you can hear, that's what matters. There you go.
Okay.
You're back. Mhm.
Oh, my back? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go through my question. You couldn't hear
No,
me.
I heard
Um,
all of it. I heard all
So
of it.
South
Thank you.
Central PA is the fastest growing region in Pennsylvania, particularly Cumberland County, and a lot of that population is Black and brown. But my number one concern is the ongoing lack of unity and infighting within our party,
Yeah.
as well as the pattern of elected officials only showing up in their communities when it's time to run for office. And we see
Yeah.
this mostly on the state level and up. And obviously, this is something we have to work within our party. I'm not saying it should be public, but I hope in your role with the DNC and your influence with the state party, it's going to be addressed. Elected officials also can't feel. Sometimes we forget you're there because the people elected you, so you represent the people. You're not there, and I'm not mean when I say you, I don't mean you personally.
Yeah, I
So we
understand.
have an issue with Democratic elected officials trying to dictate to the grassroots on what to do, and if they don't get the way, then poof, we don't see them. And we can't always go along to get along. We each, as my mom used to say, if I was meant to be controlled, I would have been born with a remote control. So, it's something that we need to work in with our own political party, and don't show up because Susan says something about Jerry. Talk to Jerry yourself, find out what's going on, because I can say on a statewide level, and I'm saying this in my positions, a lot of times when candidates just go to Philly and Pittsburgh, and I understand the populations, I'm not going to dispute that. But when they don't come here, they don't win. That's a general consensus with that. And we have a lot of grassroots, a lot of people, a lot of volunteers here. So I don't know if it's some of that infighting that's causing people to come here, like it's affecting the whole state. Um, but we can't continue to lose ground. So I just hope with your position and your influence on the state and national levels, you get your fellow electeds in gear, but work with us on the grassroots level so we can begin to make the change that you're speaking about happen. Because I believe in the change you're speaking of. But if people continue to act like they are, it's just not going to.
So let's let Representative Kenyatta. But again, what I'm hearing as somebody on the outside, right? What I'm hearing is still some problems, some internal issues that need to be addressed, even at the local level. But go ahead.
Let me be and with all due respect to I mentioned, and Rajat, I want to more deeply dive into what you said, but with all due respect, I think a part of what happens, you all understand this. You're in journalism, obviously on the editorial side. But once a story is written, the one story justifies the next story, and then every outlet has to write some version of the same story, and you get one new person who says something different, but the facts haven't changed. And so we've seen a lot of story about Democratic, infighting that really is the same story written over and over and over again. But I do think there is the fault line that exists right now in our party. I think is less ideological. It's less regional. I think it's a big debate right now, and I think this is a healthy debate between folks who think we need to roll over and play dead and folks who think we need to fight like hell in this moment. I am unabashedly on team fight like hell. And I think in this moment, there is a serious conversation, which I think age is a facet of it, but I don't think age is necessarily central. Where, how people sort of identify on the ideological spectrum is a facet of it, but I don't think really central. I think the debate right now is how hard we should fight to preserve our system of self-governance against a would-be authoritarian and a would-be king. And I think we need to be using every tool at our disposal to do that. To that end, I think about a show Silo, and I don't know if any of you watch the show Silo on HBO. I don't watch Silo. My husband watches Silo, but if I want to be in my living room while he's there, then I have to watch what's on the TV. And so I know, Jeff, this doesn't feel fair, but this is my house, okay? And he has the remote control, Rajat, okay? I'll tell you that. And all that being said, I'm watching one of the episodes once, and one of the main characters says, we have to figure out how to be angry with each other and not at each other. And I think that that's critical in this moment because the anger that we're seeing right now is driven out of all of us witnessing a wholesale assault on our courts, on science, on I mentioned all of the economic impact of this administration on poor and working class people. And so there is a lot to be frustrated about. And I think that frustration is sort of, spilling out into a debate that I think can be viewed a variety of different ways. But as again, I would say is sort of summed up between, how hard and how should we fight in this moment. But also, I think a part of the problem is that there is a distinction that I understand is not a distinction that the average person is carrying around, that the DNC is not congressional Democratic leadership.
Mm.
The DNC is, one part of a broader landscape of Democratic organizations. And I think what happens is anything that any Democrat does gets pegged as like the DNC is doing it. I'll give you an example. There were
Well,
some, big.
I hate to
Oh, please,
interrupt
sir.
you, but I
Oh,
have
please,
been
I know we're short
told
on
that
time.
you have less now than 5 minutes
No, let's.
because of,
I think session. Give me 1 second. I think
okay,
session has
because
been
I just
delayed.
don't, I want
No
to make
session.
sure
No
that,
session is not delayed. Session's not
okay,
delayed. Let me
all
let me
right,
let me let me end this, and then if I could just say one other thing. But this got a lot of attention, Ms. Davis,
okay.
where there was this talk about the DNC investing $20 million to figure out how to talk to young men. The DNC was never doing that. There were a
Mm.
couple of donors who were doing that, who have nothing to do with the DNC, but yet, I spent days in interviews sort of responding to like, is that a good use of our money? And so I think there's an education piece that we have to constantly be engaged in trying to understand people, what our roles and responsibilities are. And we can't do everything, or you do nothing well if you try to do everything.
So we're going to, before you go, just let me
Yeah,
give
please.
a few people a chance to just quick ask a question
Yeah,
and then
please,
you
please,
will
please. And I'm so
summarize.
sorry
So
for
Jeffrey,
being
you
so
were
long-winded.
next. And then I think we also had David Dix. And I don't know, Gloria, was your hand up? So just quickly, concise
Yeah,
things that
please.
he can go and go ahead, Jeffrey.
I'll make it quick. How much of an effect, seeing what happened in New York, and that there is a real internal problem with the Democratic Party, how much of an effect do you think that will have in this state, other states for that matter, but in this state, if Governor Shapiro decides to run for president, is he going to have to deal with an internal problem right here in Pennsylvania, where you've got lots of Democrats agreeing with the guy from New York as opposed to a more establishment figure. How do you think this is going to affect things?
Okay, quickly, David Dix, you want to throw your question in?
I'll add the recent announcement of the retirement of Congressman Dwight Evans. What kind of profile do you think would be appropriate for a new generation of leadership for that congressional district?
And Gloria, throw your question in and we'll let him wrap it all up as he can.
Yeah, in running for Auditor General, you had two things on your platform that tie in with some of the things you talked about and some you haven't. But the one was taking back responsibility for annual school compliance audits for the Pennsylvania Department of Education. That's important to me. I'm wondering why you felt that way, why you feel that's on your platform. And then taking back responsibility for, I'm sorry, the other was ensuring hospitals and nonprofits had to disclose their use of state dollars. What was precipitated that?
Okay, so I'm going to let you sum it up.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Perfect. I'll start with the first one. A part of, what has been communicated as a sort of debate nationally as it related to my role for vice chair was about the party being neutral in primaries. And so when you talk about New York, you had different Democrats doing what Democrats do in primaries and what everybody does in primaries. People pick their favorite Democrat in the primary. When the primary is over, it is our job to listen to voters and rally behind that nominee. I want to be crystal clear. We should not have a paradigm where a couple of people, even if I'm a part of the couple of people, sit in a room and we decide who should be our nominees. That's not how it should work. It's not how it can work. Voters decide who they want nominees to be, and we need to be making sure that the party infrastructure is not putting its finger on the scale. And so I've heard often that, this was a loss for the party because they wanted Cuomo or whatever. This was not a loss for the party. Every time we gain a Democratic nominee that receives the enthusiastic support of their constituents is a great day, because that means we're one day closer to a general election where that Democratic nominee can beat back a Republican who will have no real agenda, because their only agenda has to be staying on the good side of one guy in the White House. And that is the unfortunate thing about what's happening in the Republican Party right now, where you have senators like Tom Tillis who don't feel like they can say anything freely unless they decide to resign office. And so that's very sad. To your question about school audits and about hospitals being clear with how they use their dollars, a part of what I believe people's frustration with government is that so often government is not working for them. And the Auditor General has incredible tools at their disposal to highlight the ways in which government isn't working, and to use the bully pulpit, to use well-written reports to advance a policy agenda that helps people understand where those pain points are and put them in a position to go to their legislators and other elected officials and really demand that they address the concerns that we have. A prime example are cyber charter schools and all of the dollars that are being siphoned from the public coffers to go to give out gift cards or other ridiculous uses of public dollars that we've seen from cyber charters. And because of the uproar, we now passed a massive cyber charter reform bill, House Bill 1500. Now we're waiting on the Senate to do the same thing. That bipartisan piece of legislation, I hope they take up, along with funding mass transit and a host of other things that have been sent to the Senate in a bipartisan way. I do want to touch on the piece about, the governor. If the governor chooses to run for president, obviously he will be an incredibly, compelling candidate. And I look forward to the country getting to see all that the Democratic Party has to offer in terms of those who want to raise their hand and run for president. And then I will close by making a note about my dear friend and our Congressman Dwight Evans. Congressman Evans is an incredible person whose lifetime of service is one that all of us, I think if we're smart, would try to find ways to emulate some of the good things that he did to make government work for working people and working families. Obviously, I want my next congressperson to be somebody who believes in making life better for working people and working families. But I think today is about Dwight. Today is about the congressman, about honoring his legacy. We'll have a lot of people who'll step up and get in that race, and we'll see how that shapes out in the next couple of weeks and months.
Well, thank you very much. I know that you have a busy schedule and they're pulling you right now. So
You have a bill that's about to go on the floor.
well,
That's
go
about to
right
go on the
ahead
floor.
and vote well.
All right.
All
I
right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye, everybody. Sorry for the
Bye-bye.
delay. Take
No
care.
problem. We will stop the recording now.